With a focus on an outdoor lifestyle, a comprehensive healthcare system that won't bankrupt you, and employment law that heavily favours employees, there's a lot to love about living in Norway. Hello, my American friends, and greetings from Trondheim, Norway. Are you ready for a fresh start? You're not alone right now. With frustrations growing, many Americans are reconsidering their future plans. Now, I know this from the huge volume of email I receive literally on a daily basis. And on the day the recent election results became clear, my articles about moving to Norway received record numbers of visitors from the US. Now, is Norway the answer for you? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but keep watching to find out how it's possible for you to move to Norway. The historical ties between Norway and the US date back to the 19th century when Norwegians, alongside many others from Europe, migrated seeking a better life in the New World. Now, this migration means there's now a big population of Americans with Norwegian roots living all across the US. Perhaps that's the reason, or maybe it's the draw of the cuddly capitalism economic model or the high standard of living. Whatever the reason is, Norway seems to be an attractive option for many Americans right now. I understand. After all, I've moved to Norway and I do run a website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things Norway. Actually, do check out lifeinnorway.net for more on relocation, including stories from Americans who are now living happy lives in Norway. Now, as I've written about many times before, moving to Norway from outside Europe isn't so straightforward. That being said, there are plenty of Americans living here in Norway today. The last time I checked, there were more than 10,000 American citizens living in Norway. So it's possible. Now, because of Norway's close ties with the EU, European citizens do have an easier path to moving to Norway, a much easier path, in fact. But for American citizens, the process, while more difficult, is not impossible. First and foremost, let's cover how Americans cannot move to Norway. There is a huge misconception in some Norwegian American communities that anyone with Norwegian roots can easily move to Norway. Now, as with many other countries around the world, that's just not the case. Family immigration does exist, but it doesn't mean what you might think it means. We'll cover more on that route later. Also, there's no retirement permit available to Americans. You cannot buy your way into Norwegian residence as you can in some other countries that are popular with American retirees. But it's not the end of the story. I'm now going to outline 5 of the most common ways I see Americans moving to Norway today. Number 1, find a job. Perhaps the most straightforward way to move to Norway is to get a work permit. However, actually doing so by finding a job is often anything but straightforward. That's because a Norwegian employer has a massive pool of qualified candidates to consider before even thinking about hiring someone else. And I'm not just talking about a pool of candidates in Norway. Citizens of any EU country do not need a work permit to work in Norway. So that means a Norwegian employer has a pool of 400 million people to choose from first before they need to turn to the US or any other country outside the EU where hiring someone is a lot more administratively difficult for them. Now, there will always be exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, to get a job offer as an American citizen, you'll need to be working in an industry for which Norway is suffering a workforce shortage or have a significant skills and or substantial profile in your chosen industry. Also, remember that speaking English natively is not really an advantage here, unlike many other countries. There's very little demand for English teachers in Norway, as English teaching is finished by the end of high school and really a long way before that. That also means that native English ability is not really the standout skill on a CV as it might be in many other countries, because the majority of Norwegians are fluent and the majority of those have essentially native language ability, even though they were brought up here in Norway. Now, I'm probably making it sound impossible, But there is hope. In fact, there are thousands of Americans working in Norway today. For inspiration, check the link down in the description for one story of an American citizen who found a job right here in Trondheim. Number 2, get a transfer. Now, many American companies have a presence in Norway, and that, of course, offers a shortcut into the labour market. Most will offer job rotations or advertise vacancies internally first. So if you work for one of these companies in the US, you're going to be at the head of the queue. Some examples of American companies operating in Norway include Tesla, IBM, Google, Yahoo, ExxonMobil, 3M, Microsoft, and Cisco. Now, if this route is interesting to you, check out the American Norway Chamber of Commerce, or AmCham for short. For more information, you'll find a lot more companies listed there too. The advantage of looking for jobs with American companies is that many don't require Norwegian language ability, at least not at first. You're likely going to have to learn Norwegian over time, but the lack of expectation upon initial hiring is a big benefit. Number 3, start a business. Now, given the high number of self-employed people in the US, I can imagine this being a very attractive option for many people. However, once again, it is not so easy. European citizens are able to register as self-employed in order to move to Norway with pretty much no barriers at all. However, everyone else, including Americans, need to apply for a work permit to be self-employed. The requirements to get one of those are high. Firstly, you must have at least bachelor's level or equivalent vocational education in the field of your proposed business. You must also be able to prove likely business income of at least 310,000 kroner per year. At the time of recording, that's about $28,500 US. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot, and well, it is actually well below the average income here in Norway. But be warned, you must make that money in the first year. And that's because self-employed work permits must be renewed every year. Check the link down in the description for the story of one self-employed American who failed to hit that target in year 1 and had to leave the country at pretty short notice and hasn't been able to come back since. Finally, the Directorate of Immigration consults the county you intend to move to when deciding whether the income level is achievable and if the skills are needed in that county before awarding a self-employment work permit. I've heard from many people going through this process that getting a permit in a rural area, such as a fjord village or up in northern Norway, is much easier than if you're applying in Oslo or Bergen, for example. Number 4, studying in Norway. Studying for a master's degree is a popular choice among American citizens. Now, despite recent changes to the tuition fee rules, which have made it much more expensive to study in Norway, competition for places at Norwegian universities remains strong with international students. But if your grades are good, you have a genuine passion for your chosen field, and you have the money for tuition, then why not give it a go? Of course, it helps if you study in one of the areas that Norway specialises in, such as the numerous energy-related science and engineering degrees. But there's also remarkably niche topics, including Ibsen studies at the University of Oslo, and many Arctic-related degrees at the Arctic University of Norway up in Tromsø. Now, a study permit doesn't guarantee you long-term residence in Norway, but it does entitle you to work during your studies, which is of course a big help for living expenses. It also means there's plenty of opportunity to build up a network and obtain a job offer in order to gain a work permit when your study permit is over. Number 5, marry a Norwegian. Now, this one might come across as a little tongue-in-cheek, but I do meet many Americans who are in Norway because they fell in love with a Norwegian. If you're in this position, there is a family immigration permit available for those who are married to a Norwegian already or who plan to get married in Norway. Both people must be at least 24 years old with plans to get married within 6 months and live together in Norway in order to get that permit. Family immigration permits are also available if you're already married to a Norwegian, as I said, or if you're planning to marry or are married to a foreigner who is already a resident of Norway. Does that make sense? Good. Family immigration is complex, and it's one that Norwegian authorities monitor closely. So consult their detailed rules at UDI to understand how they apply to your specific circumstances. So there you have it, 5 ways Americans can move to Norway. That's by no means an exhaustive list, by the way, but they are the 5 most common ways that I see today. As with any immigration process, there are many ifs and buts. So if you're serious about relocation, be sure to check out the full rules and regulations that apply to you by checking out the website of the Norwegian Directorate of Immigration, UDI. That's at udi.no. Simply switch the website language to English and click Want to Apply to get started. If you're serious about moving to Norway, make sure you visit the country first and spend a good amount of time learning about your potential new home. Watch this video next for my recommendations on the very best places to visit here in Norway on such a trip. Thanks for watching.